Hey guys, what's up? It's the Gimp'd Gamer. I know it's been a while since I made a video. I decided with the announcement of Classic and, Battle for Azeroth, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about my feelings on Classic WoW since I've played the game more than enough times. And even though I never really completed it, I still have some thoughts on the matter, so here's my take on everything.
The drums of war thunder once again.
In vanilla, I played Hunter, so I'm going to talk about what I remember as a Hunter, mostly. Hunters had a summon and dismiss pet that could be bugged easily. It used to be a spell that would take a while to cast, and you could bug out that casting time, so the pet would disappear instantly, and he would come back with full health. What you could do is dismiss your pet, make it come back with full health, keep tanking, and keep killing whatever it was that you were killing. We could only track one mob at a time. There was no tracking every type of mob on the planet. You could only track humanoids, whatever it was that you wanted to track one at a time, and you had to earn the rank. So at one level you would get tracking humans, and then in a couple more levels you would get giants, and then in a few more levels you would get tracking dragonkin. So it wasn't like right after the bat you could track everything. You had to earn all those tracking skills. Heal pet was also channeled, so if your pet was going down and you wanted to heal them, you would have to sit there and channel it while you were doing no damage. Hunters could tame any pet at, I think it was level 10 or 15 that they could do it. They could tame any pet as long as they stayed alive, and it didn't matter if the pet was bigger than them. So you could go up to King Banglash at level 10 in theory. If you had a group or a guild that wanted to help you get that pet, you could go out to the Stranglethorn Valley, assuming you didn't die, and you could tame King Banglash at level 10 if you wanted to, if that was your fancy. I believe it would level with you, and it caused for some pretty interesting PvP situations, let's say that. Many outdoor elite mobs could be CC'd by concussive shot and both ice and frost traps at the same time. So you can basically go up to a elite 10-12 levels higher than you. As long as they weren't immune to concussive shot, you could kite them around and keep making them chase you until they were dead. That was pretty fun. I remember doing that myself. A lot of the hunter's abilities that are now separated used to all be in the same spec no matter what spec you had. So if you were a marksman, if you were survival, if you were beast mastery, you got wing clip, concussive shot, and serpent sting. Other things about the game worth noting are the One Ring. There was a One Ring that was released in patch 1.11.1. It was acquired through fishing. It was one of the only rings that you can get at level 10. It offered one in every stat, so it was considered a pretty good ring. Gold farmers were impossible to avoid, even in DMs. I still remember some of the DMs that I got directly from gold farmers. And it wasn't just gold farmers going in your DMs either. It was oftentimes people trying to troll you. That was just great. Dwarves used to be able to track treasures on their map. Sometimes I'd be farming, I'd look up, I see a chest, and a dwarf would just come in out of nowhere and take the thing from me right in front of me, little. If you wanted a mount that was used by a different race, you would have to earn Exalted with that race before they would trust you with their mounts. So if you were an orc and you wanted to ride a Kodo, you would have to get Exalted with Thunderbluff first. And back in that time, it wasn't easy to get Exalted with anybody. There was not reputation tabards to help you grind up your reputation faster. You would either have to turn in cloth, or hope you found a new quest with reputation from that particular race. Professions were very important to grind in progression. Leatherworking was needed to craft certain items made from dragon scales. Engineering and mining gave hunters high-end ammunition that you couldn't get from any vendor. Enchanting gave you Crusader and Lifesteal, which would piss off most players in PvP. And most professions kept money in players' pockets because those precious items were not easy to come by. Grinding dungeons for attunements meant getting people together and hoping that they would clear the dungeon with you, or not get frustrated after a couple people died and had to do the death walk back to the particular part of the instance. If mobs popped up, it would cause a lot of frustration for people trying to come on the way back. And you could imagine if somebody didn't really know how to play the game that well and they kept dying, then it would cause a severe amount of frustration on everyone in the group. Her thing took way longer to cast, and it had like a 1 hour cooldown. So if you hearth out by accident and you moved on to a new zone and you forgot to set your hearth to the new zone, well, you hearth all the way back to your old zone and you have to walk all the way back. And even after you reassign your hearth, it wouldn't reset. You would still have to wait for the hour to complete. So getting around was quite the task, even with hearthstone in your bag. There were smaller stats on weapons, and anything with 100 on any stat was considered a really big deal. If you had anything like tier 1, people would try to steal you from other guilds. Don't even get me started about what the guilds were like.
Many whelps! Now handle it!
Sometimes within the same faction, you would have 2 guilds that opposed each other. They were always trying to steal members from each other, trying to race through dungeons faster than each other, just for the sake of being the better guild or the winner in their feud. You would have players getting blacklisted off of realms for not getting along with people or for ninja looting. It was quite the scene. There were weird stats on items that made no sense. Rogues running around with intellect on their boots because they also wanted the agility and the stamina that was on the boots. You would have warriors with spirit and intellect because there was dodge and stamina on the piece of gear that they wanted. It happened to also wear it on a pally, but a warrior would be forced to wear the same thing. So you had a lot of people running around with stats on their gear that didn't really make any sense for a long time. So I have some mixed feelings about how I feel about Classic WoW. I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm confused, and I am actually kind of happy about it. I'm excited because I never got to really experience the whole aspect of the game. I was just getting to collecting my dragon scales, getting attuned when BC came out, and I really couldn't get anybody to go back in time with me and, experience it regardless. Everybody just wanted to see what BC was like. I was kind of forced to go along with the flow before I was ready. I'm kind of nervous because I know I want to play the game, but maybe I've got rose-colored glasses on and I'm not really sure if I'm remembering the game as I remember it or if I'm being nostalgic. And then, of course, would I be able to even survive in that old archetype of game? Could I have, in theory, been a good raider in that style of game, and could I have continued on to earn a higher status in PvP? So those are the kind of things that have got me nervous. It's not a big deal. In the long run, I'm kind of nervous in a good way and a bad way at the same time. And what has me confused is why it took so long to come this far with the game option. They could have done this years ago, of course. And of course I'm happy because it's Classic WoW is really fun. Why do I want to see Classic Vanilla again? Well, there's a mix of reasons. I want to see the old world again. I know this sounds nuts, but I kind of missed the way that things looked before Deathwing came along. I liked Old Barrens, not because I like running around and running for days without seeing anything. I actually liked it because of the Crossroads PvP. I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. There's also some old lost areas that got destroyed and aren't towns anymore, and I kind of miss them for nostalgic reasons. I also want to complete the old quest lines. There was a bunch I didn't get to do. I didn't get to experience some of the more class-specific quest lines. There was an attunement quest line that I was doing, attunement for the core, and I never got to finish it, never got to do it, and I just want to get it out of my system. There's a legendary item for hunters, and I wanted to get that on my hunter before BC came out, but I never got it done. So it'd be kind of nice to go back and be able to do that. I also want to play the classes as they were. I was really a noob when BC came out. I was just barely experiencing the hunter. I was trying to get to know other classes so I would know what to do around them and with them. And I want to be able to experience playing shaman, warrior, paladin under the conditions of vanilla. Maybe a smaller game compared to the full retail as it is now, but there was something about it that kept you playing longer. Because it took so long to level, because it took so long to get attuned, because there were so many requirements for so many different things. You could play each class and get a different experience each time. Obviously, some classes played out faster than others, but I really feel like there was just something about vanilla that kept you playing longer. Each little progress you made you want to go further ahead. We still get that now a little bit with the system that we have, but there's just something about less is more, and I feel like less is really more with vanilla. I also like being able to take my time, knowing that, just because it's taking me a couple months to do this, I'm not being left in the dust. There's other people that are going to take a couple months to do the same thing I'm doing, and that was kind of a thing that I enjoyed about the game. Some legendaries, enchantments, questlines, and abilities were changed or completely removed from the game. This goes back to my earlier statement. I want them back, yo! I want those things back. I didn't have any recording software back when I played vanilla, so whenever I did something amazing, I just kind of had to convince people that I did it. And of course, you know how easy it is to convince people that you did things on the internet without proof. And now that I have a better understanding of the game in general and how classes worked now versus then, I really want to see how I would play back in vanilla with my skills currently as they are today. There's also a lot of people that never played vanilla, and it's going to be really interesting and fun to see what happens when some of these players go back and play vanilla. I'm looking forward, really looking forward to the wonderful comments that are going to be in trade chat and on the forums. Okay, now let's get this straight. Old Alterac Valley. You cannot top the fun that was Old Alterac Valley. When I'm talking about fun, I'm actually talking about going into an already existing Alterac Valley that's been going on for 24 hours, summoning an Ice Lord, and watching all hell break loose. So people might ask, why you wouldn't go back and play vanilla? It's so old, it's past, it's gone now, the game's changed. I think of it as like going back and playing an old series through its entirety. Take Assassin's Creed. Every game is different and the same. It's the same franchise, it's the same game series, but each game's got a little different bit of the story. Each game has a different ending. Each game pushes the story along a little bit further, and it's got its own unique gameplay, its own rules, its own style of fighting, icons, UI, artificial intelligence, all of that. And going back and playing an old game in a series, I don't think it's any different than going back and playing vanilla as it was. I miss getting keys for dungeons. I know this is weird. Some of you are gonna make nasty comments about it down in my comments section. I miss certain satisfaction that comes with grinding up to a key that opens a dungeon that nobody else can get into, and having a group say, does anybody have the key for this particular dungeon so we can get inside? Or a guild saying, so-and-so's the only one with the key, so unless they come online or unless somebody else wants to get the key, it kind of really motivated everybody to get their own key so they wouldn't have to depend on somebody else to have a key. The return of outdoor raid bosses. I cannot emphasize how much I miss out on there being outdoor raid bosses. The amount of work that it went to get to activate these raid bosses, I heard, was pretty intense, but for me that would be worth it. I have a thing for dragons, I'm not gonna lie, and when I saw these outdoor world dragons, I knew that one day I had to kill these things, and I never got that satisfaction, so I want that back. I think this goes without saying, but yeah, everything's gonna be a hunter weapon again, so I'm really looking forward to that. Everything is a hunter weapon again. And last but not least, I'm a weirdo that misses the halls of legends and grinding up to warlord. I got to sergeant on my hunter, and I really want to push that further. I miss that old PvP ranking system. If it's a classic only thing, where only on classic you could earn these old ranks, I don't care. I'll earn them on classic, but if they carry over to current retail, I won't complain either. Just saying. Some things about vanilla that were really fun, but had really nothing to do with in-game at all. World PvP. I know a lot of people talk about World PvP and what it was like, so I'm just going to try to describe what it was like for me with the kind of experiences I had. My first experience with World PvP, I was at the crossroads, and I had no idea what World PvP was. I just saw a bunch of people attacking each other, and I said, hey, how do I join in? How do I fight? Somebody told me type /PvP. It'll flag you, and then you could attack people. So I did it, and I just started attacking people. I must have died about a dozen times. I don't know how many times I died. But every time the crossroads would get attacked, I would just join in, trying to attack level 60s, 50s. And it wasn't like the World PvP was isolated to just max levels. People from all levels would come and do these World PvP things. Sometimes you would get 25s and 35s, 15s, tagging along with higher levels just to be like, oh, let's go gank some noobs, let's go PvP at the crossroads and kill the quest givers. Horde would do it the same thing. They would go over to Westfall, or they would go over to Darkshore and just start killing off quest givers. And of course, if you want to continue playing on your character, leveling up your alt, you jump on your main, come gank some people, come fight, and sometimes it would end in total chaos with one side just giving up and logging off, and other times it would last for hours, or the base that was under attack would be defended to a point where, you know, the other side would just stop trying to attack because the corpse walk, broken gear, you name it, all these things eventually would lead to PvP ending. But like I said, sometimes it would last for hours on end, and I miss that. There were no diminishing returns that I know of that I can remember. I remember getting feared endlessly in multiple PvPs. I remember being surrounded by rogues, and they would systematically take turns keeping me stunned so I couldn't fight back while they were killing me. Just different things like that. It got to the point where Blizzard stepped in and did something to change the mechanics so that kind of thing wouldn't happen. And then we had the CC Fest that was known as Cataclysm and Miss Pandaria. Stacking buffs. I remember buffs used to stack. When you activated a scroll, it wouldn't make you pick between intellect and agility and strength. It would let you have them all. Scrolls, potions, and flasks were considered different than each other. So you could drink a flask, use a potion, use a scroll, and you would have the buffs from all of those things. Many buffs now don't get along with each other. For example, if you try to activate a potion or a flask after you have a scroll, it will tell you that you have a more powerful ability already active. That really wasn't a thing back in vanilla. As long as you had the two items, you could take one right after the other. And as long as they weren't both guardian elixirs, or if they weren't both battle elixirs or something like that, it would allow you to have the buffs from both of those items. I kind of missed that, and it caused for some pretty interesting PvPs. Kiting bosses to major cities was one of the most iconic things that I remember about Warcraft being a newbie. I remember people would go to these world bosses, tick them off enough just to keep them chasing after us, and try to kite them to major cities. Because of the game's looting system, many people would often run a dungeon and not get the drop that they were hoping for. As a result, players turn to what we call twinking, which is getting people that are a higher level than you to run through dungeons with you, solely for the purpose of you getting all the loot. Players would stay at a certain level and then take the loot that they got from their dungeons and go into BGs. This is something that I miss having in the game as well. Twinking was a lot of fun, getting the highest possible enchantment that you could for your weapon, and then putting it on that weapon and going out in the BGs was kind of a point of accomplishment and pride for a lot of players. And I think it's an element that's missing from the game. Locking your level, waiting a few hours to get into a BG, and then doing the whole process over again doesn't really seem like a lifestyle that most players want to indulge in these days. I miss twinks at all levels, and I think the locking system, the way it is, it doesn't really encourage players to stay at a certain level and play BGs that way. There was a bunch of resistance against BC when it first came out. I remember a lot of players saying that their epics were going to become useless, that the game was going to change. A lot of people didn't want to lose the PvP ranking system. They wanted to keep their rank and not lose it, or they wanted to earn a rank that they hadn't earned before. and a lot of people were using that as a point of argument against BC. There was a lot of people that didn't want to lose their legendary's effectiveness. When you spend that long playing a game trying to earn that particular piece of gear, I cannot blame people for not wanting to lose their legendaries. People thought leveling to max was going to take longer. I remember people saying, oh, well, there's 1,000,000 points from 60 to 61. That's just going to take forever with the amount of quest experience that they give us now in this state of the game. Getting 10,000 experience from one quest was pretty unheard of. A lot of people just thought that it was going to take forever to grind from 60 to 70. They didn't want to go through it. Obviously, we were all wrong about that. It didn't take very long at all to get from 60 to 70 once you understood that the mobs were incredibly overpowered and that you kind of had to play the game differently than what you did in vanilla. A small amount of people thought that they were going to have to pay for BC and vanilla at the same time. I wasn't one of them, but a small amount of people I remember said in chat that if they had to pay for a sub for vanilla and a sub for BC, then they were going to quit. Which I'm glad Blizzard didn't do, because could you imagine if they charged $15 a month for every expansion pack that you bought? I brushed on this a little bit before, but people that didn't get a chance to run in-game before saw BC as an end to that chance. They were never going to see Molten Core, that they were never going to see the end-game from vanilla, because why would anybody want to run vanilla content now that BC is out? And at that time, BC had a load of things to do, so why would anybody want to go back and run Molten Core when you could run Karazhan instead? I don't want a lot of fixes and changes in the game. I'm not a complete purist, but if there was any kind of fixes or changes that I would like to see, it would be some of the fixes and changes that I wanted to see back in vanilla while vanilla was still a thing. For example, the falling bugs. When you're walking around and all of a sudden you just drop through the world and you fall, you either log out or you hit the floor and die, or whatever the case. Maybe every fall had a different result, but I don't miss that bug and I would not like to see that thing come back. And it was really something that I think most players wanted to see fixed before BC even came out, so I wouldn't mind if they fixed it. The weird stats that are on PvP reward gear from Ashran and Wolfsrun Gulch, I talked about this earlier in the video. Some say that the old gear stats were as a result of Blizzard being unsure how their stats were going to work in their game and really what to do with everything. Some say that it was on purpose. Others say that it was just to save on programming so multiple classes could have the same piece of gear. And I'm also curious to see how the game would play out if they had the PvP reward gear with class appropriate stats. That's just more of a curiosity thing. It's just something that they could fix, and it probably wouldn't alter the game that much. The crick in the back bug. Anybody who's played WoW since vanilla or BC knows about the crick in the back bug, and it was one of those bugs that you just couldn't break no matter how many times you reload the UI. Sometimes you would log out, log back in, and there would still be a crick in the back. If you want more explanation about what crick in the back is, you could look up an Oxford video called Crick in the Back. There was another bug that was like crick in the back. It was a sliding bug where the mobs or you or other players, particularly dead bodies, would slide across the floor of the game. So it was a lag thing. The game would lag and you'd be in one spot and all of a sudden you'd see everything just sliding across the floor, readjust itself, and you'd be in a different part of the map. Not too far from where you're at, but it was enough to just aggravate the hell out of you. And you'd be like, okay, I just got the sliding mob bug and it slid me and my dead mob right into a fresh pack of new mobs. That was a thing. I don't miss it. So like I said, not too many changes, just changes that would have made in vanilla if vanilla had just stayed the way it was. Imagine if BC had never been a thing, but they decided, you know, our game's got some bugs and some flaws and we're gonna fix them. There's certain items here that just don't make sense and we're gonna fix them too. Some of that gets into a shady gray area of, does it change and alter the game? Does it really count as vanilla if you do that? I'm not gonna push it. If they do, fine. If they don't, I don't care. Either way, it's more about the content that I care about, the in-game, the quest lines, the way that the abilities work, and the way the classes will run, trees, that kind of thing are the things that I care about the most. There's one last thing that I'd like to see them do, if they do it, because it would be pretty awesome. I would like to see them make an achievement called Welcome Back Loser. Quit around Burning Crusade and return solely for Classic. The title is The Purist, and it's worth 50 points. Blizzard, please add it. Some things I don't miss, but I'll deal with anyway in the game. Smaller bag spaces. There was much smaller bag spaces back in vanilla, but I'll deal with it anyway. Long runs to get places. For those of you who don't know, running anywhere in vanilla was a chore. If you didn't have the Flight Master and you didn't have a mount, running around was just a pain. Some classes could do it faster. Hunters and Druids had a little bit of an advantage, so did Shamans. But other than that, a lot of classes spent a long time running around, getting from one place to another. Gold was very hard to come by, partly due to the fact that running around everywhere took forever, killing mobs took a while, getting a quest done took even longer. Unless you had everything down packed with science, it would take a while for you to grind some gold. Fortunately, I have a few places in mind that I'm going to go farm once Classic comes out. I've got good faith that I'll start making gold pretty fast. Can you imagine clicking on the Q button, waiting an hour, sometimes 3, and finally, when you're about to give up hope of ever going into a BG at all, you finally get the queue to pop. Now, could you imagine not being able to leave the Battle Master? Because if you did leave and you missed the queue, you'd have to run all the way back to queue again. That's what vanilla was like. Searching for groups was a thing of art. It was nothing like looking for groups that you have today where you click a button and the system pairs you up with people for you automatically. You would have to sit in a central city or hope that whatever era you were in, say for instance the Barons, had somebody in that chat channel waiting to do the same exact thing that you were wanting to do. Not something I really miss. Add-ons, add-ons, add-ons. There was not a single time after my first week in Warcraft where I didn't have add-ons running on my computer. It was almost impossible to do anything without them. The game didn't tell you where the quest was, didn't mark where dungeons were, it did not mark where certain flight paths were unless you discovered them. It didn't show you where you should go next. It did not allow you to adjust certain hotbars. If it's something that's got to be done to play Classic, then yeah, sure. Okay, I'll go download the add-ons that I no longer need to download because they're incorporated into the game. I'm really interested to see how they're going to implement the system. I'm wondering if they're going to have Classic on its own separate server and keep retail the way it is, or if they're going to have a phasing rollback system like they already have in the game, where you walk up to an NPC, you tell them, I would like to see the world the way it was, or whatever the triggering dialogue would be, and then you go back that way. And if it's successful, if it catches on, if it's trendy, are they going to do it with all the previous expansions? Could we, in theory, go back to BC and Wrath of the Lich King the way it was and re-experience it as fresh new players and classes we've never played, doing quests that we never had a chance to clear? I think it would be really interesting if they did that with other expansions. I mean, I never got to see Wrathion. There was a lot of in-game I never got to see because I primarily played PvP for a long time and didn't really care about in-game. And I just like to go back and experience the stuff that I never got to experience during those expansions. And if they decided to do a rollback system, would they let us roll back our characters to the way they were before BC came out? A PTR system where we copy the characters the way they were on a certain date. Say, for example, if you wanted to replay your Hunter take what your hunter was the day before BC's release date and put it into vanilla, or are they going to make us start over? I think that they will make us start over. I don't think that they're going to let us copy our old characters from that time. If they did, it would be really awesome, but I don't think that they're going to do that. And another thing is, should they put low population servers together? Should they condense the servers so there's more people on each server? Should they leave them the way they are? And if they did some of these things, would you still play? Would you prefer to play on a vanilla only server, or would you like the rollback system being incorporated into retail so you don't have to switch back between the two? And my last question is, do you think that they should charge 2 separate subs? Do you think that they should be included into retail? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And that's gonna pretty much wrap up this video. I'm glad you guys sat with me through this. It took a while to put together, and I hope that you guys found some enjoyment from it, and I hope to see some of you in Classic when it's released. Catch you later, guys. Peace.